What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, I'm going to change it up a small bit. I want to make it more of a quick fire episode, so I will hope to keep it short and sweet, but I want to try touch on all the points. And what I'm going to discuss today is how to, improve recovery, optimize recovery after doing multiple sessions in a row. Okay. Now, as I said, I won't hold you too long, but the reason I want to go into this is that a lot of people get stuck with when they're looking at their sessions on a calendar. They get probably a bit caught up in when they should fit their recovery days in, what they should look at during the recovery days, as well as what's going to help to optimize their performance going later on in the year. And then what I find happens to this is that people look into small things that make a small difference, and they hope to make long-term changes. They hope to make a big gain off of that. Okay, so they focus on smaller parts of recovery that really, if they focus on the bigger ones, nail those, they get 90% of the recovery right, and then they could focus really in on those little parts of it after. So I want to go into a bit of detail on how you improve your recovery after multiple sessions in a row. Okay, now to jump into it, do we change the way we plan our recovery sessions after multiple sessions, after high load, or after, let's say, a couple of hard weeks? The thing is, in general, you don't massively change your recovery sessions themselves, okay? But what you may need to do is you may need to look at taking maybe longer deload weeks or more recovery days in a row, or it could be that you need to front load or back load your week so you get more out of your recovery days. And what I mean by that is, if you know you have a deload week coming up, instead of doing sessions Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you could actually front load that week, so you could get a double session done on a Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you actually have Thursday, Friday, and then you're leading into your deload week. Okay, and I do this often with people who have, let's say, races coming up and we need to get a deload week, but we want to get their sessions in, is that we'll double up sessions and then we'll pull back. And what this is it gives them high volume days, but then they get complete rest days after it. So in a lot of situations, and the thing is, I know my clients' lifestyles fairly inside out in terms of, like, obviously I don't know everything about them, but I know a lot of what's going on with their sleep, with their hydration and their stress, and I know what's going on with their diet. I know everything, the training that they're doing and the training load that they have. So it gives me a better opportunity to block these things together when they need to. So front loading your week or back loading your week are great ways of doing that. And if you get used to this, and if you're able to optimize this, you'll start to see that you can gain a lot more benefits, especially as you know it's near the end of a let's say a mesocycle or a block of 6 weeks to 8 weeks training. You could really bunch stuff together, and then you can ease off for the couple of days after that. And what I actually like to do sometimes is I like to front load the week, or I like to mostly front load the week is what I usually do, as opposed to back loading it. Front loading it is when you put most of your sessions at the start. When I like to front load my week is if they have a really tight schedule and I want to get 2 recovery days in a row, or even 3 recovery days in a row. Sometimes in some situations I would prefer them to train twice on Monday and Tuesday, once on Tuesday and maybe twice on Wednesday, and then take Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, or something like that. Okay, so that I know they have to get a certain amount of sessions in, so they can get the best out of it going forward, but I also want them to get enough recovery time in, and that they're not just going to fail when the pressure comes on. Now, outside of that, I think the next thing is, where do most people actually fall down with their recovery, and where do most people make mistakes when you're looking at recovery after a couple of sessions or after high volume weeks? I think, as we all know at this stage, especially if you're listening to this podcast for a while, it's people aren't covering the basics. Recovery in general is extremely basic when you break it down to that nervous system change of parasympathetic and sympathetic, and I talk about this a lot more in other podcasts. I actually did a podcast recently on how fatigue kicks up, or when you know it's time to rest, and I go into detail on what actually causes you to fatigue. So I guess flick back to that one if you want to go into a bit more detail on this. But I guess people aren't doing the basics. This is what the majority of people fall down on, and how they get inadequate recovery and then don't get the performance that they want. And the basics are, as we know, it's sleep, it's diet, it's stress management, hydration, and movement. They are the basics, really, when you're looking at it. And if you nail those and get all of those right, then in general, you can train for a lot longer at a lot much higher level. You'll still need your deload weeks and you'll still need your rest days, but that should support the body enough so that you can get the most out of it when it comes to it. Okay, now if you don't have those things in place, it doesn't really make a difference what you do on your recovery days, whether you go to the sauna or if you get in front of a red light or if you foam roll or whatever you do, go for a massage. It really doesn't make that much of a difference because your main recovery agents are affected and you need to get those right. So I think that's one huge one. Another one, and I go into a lot more detail on this, is relying on feeling alone. And this is another one that you want to put how you're feeling in with what your training schedule and training load is looking like and your lifestyle is looking like. Just relying on feeling, at times some people aren't as connected to their body as others would be. So some people it works perfectly and you'll have an idea of when it's time to pull back. But it's similar to an intuitive eater in that, and I hear nutritionists and personal trainers and dietitians talking about this a good bit, is that somebody who claims to be an intuitive eater, even if they are, let's say, overweight, may be that their intuition is off a small bit. And this can happen the same with their people who have an idea of their body. Now, in general, people who are training for a long time, who have a fairly high training history, a fairly high volume of training history, do have a better idea and a better understanding of their body, but it's not the same for everybody. So it's important to take in both sides, your training load and your load overall, as well as how you're feeling on a day-to-day. And then I guess the next thing is like not taking long enough breaks, taking some crazy idea from Instagram or YouTube or whatever it is, TikTok, and trying to implement that first without taking everything else into account. And then really the other one, it's something that I won't speak on massively because I'm not in a position to do it, would be diet and nutrition. And I have spoken to a couple of different nutritionists and I had an episode with Mike Nicholson, who'll be on again soon enough. And we basically discussed how to optimize your nutrition for different events. And I would definitely say go back and check that podcast out because he goes into a lot more detail and it's very, very, very specific. But in general, what I look at with clients is I look at getting their protein levels to the level that they need to. Okay, so making sure that it's like 1.6 grams per kg up to 2 grams per kg. And that's a easy way to do it for me, okay? But then as we get into things, if they need it, we look at getting a nutritionist involved then. So after that, then I think the next thing is how can you recover after a high volume week? And this is kind of getting into the nitty gritty of it. And as I said, you need to nail the basics of getting your 7 to 8 hours sleep. You need to nail your diet so it's good quality food. You're taking in enough veg, fruit and veg. You're taking in enough carbs. You're taking in enough protein, hydration, so that you're actually taking in a good bit of water. Everyone kind of looks at the 2 liters of water, but in general it's different for body mass, and it's really important to take that into account. If you're over, let's say 60 kilo, you probably should be taking in more than 2 liters of water, and it's important to take that into account. Movement, so that you're actually getting through your mobility and movement sessions so that you can get the body circulating synovial fluid around the joints, as well as your stress management. Okay, and stress management is huge because and it's something that I often try to avoid, putting a rest or recovery day on a Monday, because it's when you're getting back into schedule, generally when you're getting back into work, and as a result, people will really struggle to make that a proper and full rest and recovery day. So I would prefer to do it on like a Sunday or something like that, where they can take the whole day off to themselves. So that's a huge one. Now, as I just kind of mentioned there, mobility is really, really good way to do it, of taking your time to go down, turning that nervous system down into a more relaxed state and circulating the synovial fluid around the joints to promote healing and promote like joint regeneration. And a lot of people, what you'll see is, and this is going on an off course just for a second, is that people who have been diagnosed with arthritis, degenerative disc disease, whatever it is, they'll often feel that that's their diagnosis for life now. But in general, all of these conditions can be improved, and you can improve pain levels, you can improve function and everything, and you can generally get back to where you want to get back to, depending on your beliefs, depending on everything else. And I won't talk about that right now, but you have to take that into account. But mobility and movement is excellent to get your joints moving again and get everything circulating around inside in them. The next then, I think, and it's something that we need to touch on a bit more, once you have nailed the basics, okay, what you want to do on your days off is you want to promote a relaxed state. And you want to take your body from this high alert fight or flight state into this more rest and digest state. And simple ways of doing that are getting out into nature, taking in sunlight, whether that be in the morning, in the middle of the day. Maybe you get up and watch the sunrise if that's in line with your schedule, or you watch the sunset at night. It could be that you just go down to a forest or down by the water or into the sea and you go for a swim and just spending time around nature, observing, not taking anything too serious, and kind of putting yourself into a more relaxed state. Activities you enjoy is huge, and it's like what I always say is like hanging around with your family and friends, people that you love, is a huge one. It could be that on your recovery day you may like to play a small bit more chess, or you might like to do puzzles, or it could be that you like to get into painting or doing art, which I think is actually really is an excellent way of doing it. Another one as well that I've introduced with clients before would be singing. That's a huge one. Or dancing. There are other ones. Once it's not crazy high intensity, but in general they should get away with it. But doing things that you enjoy is really, really important on your recovery days, because it does help the body to kind of reassess what the issue is, and it gives it a chance to recover and heal itself. Then when you've all those things, you can look at your adjuncts, like your sauna, like your ice bath, like foam rolling and massage, different things like that. They are shorter term. They may help a good bit, or they may help each person differently, but they're something that you start to look at after you've everything done. If you're looking at sauna specifically, I actually did a podcast on thermotherapy, and the saunas, you need to be spending a lot more time than you would expect in them to get the most out of them, but they're excellent for increasing testosterone, increasing HGH, which is human growth hormone, and promoting muscle recovery as a result. Now, time-wise, you're probably supposed to be spending 15 to 20 minutes, or really it's above 20 minutes, a lot of the research looks at, and it has to be over 180 degrees, which I could be wrong. That's Fahrenheit, not Celsius, or you'd boil inside. But I could be wrong, but I think it's in and around about 80 degrees Celsius. So they're the main ones. Outside of that then, I would say plan your recovery, and plan your recovery days in advance, and plan your recovery blocks in advance. And as I said, I've gone into this in more detail on another podcast. So I'm actually going to leave it at that for today, guys. It's probably the shortest podcast I've ever done, but I wanted to make it a quick fire one to kind of run over the basics again, to put people in a better position of, okay, I've been training for the last 6 weeks, I've been training for the last 8 weeks, what do I do now? As I said, you need to look at scheduling recovery and rest days, and a few of them in a row help massively, I find, with my clients as well. Whether that be you're taking Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, it could be a deload week, and on a deload week you may be just halving the amount of exercise that you do. So on a normal week, if you train 6 times, on a deload week you might only train 3 times, and it might be half the intensity for each training session. You could, if you wanted to put one higher intensity. It really depends on what your goals are, what time of the year it is, and what you're aiming for, if there's a competition coming up or not, because that's kind of optimizing it a small bit more. And in general, it's a bit more difficult to do that without knowing what your schedule is specifically. If you do want to know, just send me a message and I will hopefully be able to help you out with that. Then outside of that, as I said, you need to nail the basics. Most people who mess up are not nailing the basics. They're relying on things they find on Instagram. They're relying on just feeling alone, even when they haven't that level of intuition yet. Their diet is probably off a good bit. They're not taking in enough protein, and they just eat shite on their recovery days. And it's important. Obviously, you can let loose at different times, but when you're looking at optimizing, you need to be optimal in all your different ways. So I think if you start to get those in place, you'll be surprised with how much of an effect it can have, as well as taking long enough breaks. If you need a deload week, take your deload week. It doesn't have to be just, okay, I took Saturday and Sunday off and I'm good to go. You'd be surprised how you feel coming back after a deload week. It really has a huge effect, and it's something that I always implement with clients. Outside of that, what you do then is you need to I guess, focus, or I should say you can focus on front loading the week if you have a deload week coming up to get the most out of it, and backloading it in different situations if you're moving back into a training block. How can you recover after high volume weeks? Nail the basics. Mobility, movement stuff really, really helps. Getting out and just going for walks, getting some sunlight in, some nature, and activities that you enjoy. Once you've all of those ticked off, you can start looking at saunas, you can start looking at cold baths or plunge pools, you can start maybe looking at foam rolling and massage. And as a last, I really like massage. I enjoy massage. I don't promote it as a recovery agent, but in certain situations, if getting massage helps you to sleep better, then it could be a recovery agent in that particular situation. And the same with foam rolling. So I don't like to write these things off completely. They can be used in different situations, but I think people probably put too much emphasis on them and don't put it on enough of the other ones. And I think that's why sometimes on Instagram I come across as they aren't the best, but they do actually help in different situations. But that's all from me today, guys and girls. I hope you're all doing well. If you like this podcast, if you like these shorter form, faster podcasts, just let me know. Please let me know on Instagram. It will help me. I'll have a better idea of what you want covered. I could do one of these every once in a while on a specific topic, and it's one that you can just click back, and if you're going for a walk or if you are going for a drive, you can just listen to it over again. If you wouldn't mind, I would really, really, really appreciate if you could rate this on Spotify. I just saw there's a new rating on Spotify, so if you could do that, and on iTunes as well, if you're listening to it on that, it helps massively. Subscribe on YouTube, Mobility Tutor. And last of all, the best thing that you can do if you are getting value from this, and the best thing that you can do for me to help me out with it, is if you share this on your story, or if you just send it directly to a friend who you think would be interested in it. Lastly, if anyone is interested in setting up a consultation, if you have an injury or an issue going on and you want to set up a consultation and we go through a remote physio consultation, or if you're looking for something that you need to put a plan in place, you have bigger goals and you're aiming to get back to something and you've had an issue or an injury that's been holding you back, just send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com. You can go on Instagram. I have a form you can fill out, whatever's easiest for you, but if you go on that, fill it out, we will set up a call, talk through it, and we will put a plan in place. I'll also just be able to answer your questions if you do have any as well. But that's all from me. Thank you so much for listening again this week. I really, really appreciate it. And I will chat to you all again next week. Have a good one.